A foreign object from outside the Earth landed somewhere on Earth. The foreign object brought a terrible creature that would eat human essence to survive and feed its eggs. Until finally a group of young people got the terror of the monster. At the beginning of the film, there is a foreign object entering and heading towards the Earth. Coincidentally, at that time, there was a man driving his car named Lenny. Lenny was on his way home, but he felt suddenly his radio was damaged and the broadcast was messed up. A few moments later, he saw a foreign object like a meteor falling not far from his location. Lenny tried to find out what it was and started to approach. Lenny saw a kind of egg in the middle of the foreign object, but soon there was a monster with some parts of its body made of steel. The monster started chasing Lenny, but unfortunately Lenny did not manage to escape. The monster climbed onto his car and stabbed Lenny using something from his stomach. Lenny lost control of his car until he and his car entered a small ravine. Lenny's body slowly rotted and seemed to lose its essence, and in the end, Lenny died. Meanwhile, on the other hand, a man named Bert was arguing with a woman named Claire. They were discussing something that seemed important, but they had different opinions. Bert prioritized safety while Claire just wanted money. Besides that, there was an old woman named Aunt Summer. She was Bert's wife. A few moments later, a young man named Roth came. He had just finished an adventure, climbing and so on in the area. Claire then came to him and asked Roth to help guide the people who would come today. Roth tried to refuse because he was still too young and inexperienced. But Claire trusted him, and there was no one else she could rely on but him. Bert actually didn't agree, but what could he do? Roth was also asked by Aunt Summer to obey Uncle Bert, because if he didn't obey, Claire would nag all day without any explanation. A few minutes later, the people Claire was talking about arrived. It turned out that they were still young. The young men and women were children who were considered naughty by their school. As punishment, they were sent to Bert and Claire to experience and deter them. Of course, one of them, Trapper, had caused trouble with Bert, but Bert didn't stay silent. Trapper couldn't do that casually here because Bert would always be watching him. They were asked to get ready and travel to the desert in the middle of nowhere. At that time, Roth accidentally entered a tent where a woman named Courtney was changing clothes. Luckily, Roth was only thrown out and didn't get scolded by her. These naughty young men and women had indeed been prepared to survive there. Bert would guarantee that they would have a different experience. Of course, there would be problems. Their incompatibility with each other made them unable to get along and almost always fought. Bert also prepared himself with weapons, just in case something dangerous happened. The journey began. It would be a long journey and would take several days. It was getting dark, so they couldn't continue the journey and set up camp there. While resting, they heard a rumbling sound from outside. It turned out to be a herd of horses running towards them. They had to get out and take shelter. Courtney got into trouble, but luckily Roth came to help her. Because of the incident, some of their equipment was damaged, one of which was the satellite radio. The next morning, they started their journey again. This time they saw something quite surprising. A meteor-like ball was found by Lenny. They didn't know what it was, but Roth found a cell phone. Meanwhile, Claire and Bert finally found Lenny's car and his body. This made them very shocked and scared. What happened to Lenny? This was definitely not a wild animal attack. There must be something else. Bert advised them to return to camp immediately for safety, but Claire, on the other hand, did not want to go back and continued their journey. In the end, Bert obeyed Claire's words and felt that maybe what happened to Lenny was indeed because of a wild animal, and she was left there for days. That night they went back to build a tent to rest. At that time, Rolf managed to turn on the cell phone he found earlier and wanted to tell Uncle Bert, but his condition was not good. At that time, Claire had an argument with one of the young men named Wes. Wes wanted to go home and leave this place. He couldn't stay long in that unclear place. But Claire forbade him while scolding him. It was her job to make the young men and women feel the punishment and make them deterred. Wes was an addict, therefore he was sent directly by his parents so he could get a deterrent effect. Meanwhile, Roth opened the gallery on the cell phone and saw a photo of Lenny. Roth wanted to ask Uncle Bert, was this cell phone Lenny's? Why did he find his photo in the cell phone? Bert, who wanted to explain, was then blocked by Claire, as if he wanted to cover up what they saw. Bert was going to explain to Roth, but he asked Roth to accompany Trapper to defecate. Unfortunately, Roth didn't want to deal with Trapper because they might end up fighting. In the end, Bert accompanied Trapper. However, when he was about to take off his pants, Trapper was surprised by the appearance of a monster that attacked Lenny. The monster appeared from the darkness, making Trapper and Bert panic. Bert protected Trapper with all his strength and told him to run away. But unfortunately, Bert was not saved. The monster ate Bert's essence until his death was similar to Lenny's. Roth, who heard the scream, tried to see what happened and witnessed Uncle Bert being killed by the monster. Luckily, the monster left after killing Bert. Everyone started to get scared and questioned what had happened. The only way they had to move to a new location for the night, because the location was no longer safe. They headed to a cave that looked like it could be used as a place to sleep, but one of them seemed to step on something disgusting slime. Then the monster reappeared and started to scare them. This time the victim was Wes. Unfortunately, Roth couldn't save him and left the cave. Seeing this incident, they had to keep moving and had to return to camp. It was no longer safe. When they returned on the road, Roth saw Lenny's car and his body. Why didn't Claire and Bert tell them this? Claire explained everything, that she was at fault. Bert initially invited them to return to camp. But Claire was the one who wanted their journey to continue. Of course, this was quite a serious problem. In the end, they returned to camp and tried to be more careful, afraid that the monster was there. For a while they stayed there until the helicopter came to pick them up, but soon the monster came again. Its arrival was marked when any monitor screen would flash, including cell phones. Armed with Uncle Bert's weapon, Roth tried to buy time for the others to take shelter in the cabin. But Claire and a young woman named Mika were trapped in the toilet. They had to run when the monster destroyed the toilet. When there was a chance, Claire and Mika ran to the cabin. But Trapper prevented Roth from opening the door. He was afraid the monster would come in. In the end, Roth knocked Trapper unconscious. They managed to get in, but Claire did not survive. Roth blamed Trapper for this incident. There was nothing they could do. Much of their equipment was damaged by the monster. For the time being, they had to stay in the cabin. There, an unusual relationship was formed between Roth and Courtney. Initially, Courtney asked Roth about his past until they got carried away and a kiss occurred between them. The next morning, a helicopter came to pick them up. The pilot asked where Claire was. Roth showed the pilot Claire's body and he was shocked. Roth was going to explain everything when they got out of that place. But unfortunately, the monster reappeared and hung on the side of the helicopter. Roth asked them all to jump. One by one they got off, but Mika did not survive. Even the pilot was also a victim. The helicopter became unstable until it hit a cliff and exploded. There was no sign of the monster, so Roth invited them to go to Aunt Summer's house. There at least they could take shelter and get food. In the middle of the trip, Trapper annoyed Roth again, and finally Roth couldn't hold it in anymore, and a fight broke out between them. On the other hand, it turned out the monster was still alive. Some of its armor was destroyed, revealing its vulnerable body. Roth and the others managed to get to Aunt Summer's house. Aunt Summer was surprised why Roth and the others looked messy. What happened? Roth explained everything, including Claire and Bert's deaths. There was no time for them to relax, so Aunt Summer tried to call the authorities for help. But the phone line was broken, a sign that the monster was around them. Trapper was acting up again by stealing Aunt Summer's car. Roth tried to stop him, but failed. But Trapper didn't last long because the monster chased and killed him. Aunt Summer felt that this couldn't be allowed to continue. She had some of Bert's weapons. They made a trap, assisted by Louis, a young man who was an expert in this matter. Everything was prepared, just waiting for the monster to appear. Not long after, the monster was behind Louis and threw him away. Luckily, Louis still survived because Roth helped him. Roth made the monster chase him until he entered the trap they had prepared. A high-powered electric trap, but the monster was still able to survive. From behind, Aunt Summer drove her small truck while carrying some fuel until she exploded along with the monster. The monster still survived even though some of its body was destroyed. Roth and Courtney fought together to finish off the monster. Roth put a bomb into the monster's stomach until it was destroyed. The three of them survived, and not long after, several authorities came to help them.